Evan had traveled many alien worlds before, but this place felt different from the moment he entered the wilderness. The land was quiet, too quiet, as if the entire valley was holding its breath. The sky was dim and full of long gray clouds, and cold winds brushed his face as he drove his small transport vehicle along the empty dirt path. He kept checking his map again and again, but the path still showed the same thing: no towns for miles, no shelters, no signals. Nothing but open wild land stretching far into the horizon. Evan was used to traveling alone, but today something felt strange. The deeper he went into the valley, the more he felt like something unseen was watching him from the shadows. Every time he looked back, the twisting rocks and tall dry grass looked normal, but his heart still felt heavy. He tried to ignore the feeling and continued his slow drive forward. Hours passed. The sun began to fade behind the mountains. The sky turned darker and colder, and the wind suddenly changed direction, blowing sharp dust across the road. Evan frowned. "This weather is getting strange," he whispered. He pushed the accelerator a little. The engine made a soft growling sound, and then everything stopped. The engine coughed once, then twice. Then it went silent. His vehicle jerked forward and froze. Evan blinked in confusion. "No, no, no. Don't do this now," he said, tapping the dashboard. He pressed the power button again. Nothing happened. He tried the emergency start. Nothing. The lights on the dashboard died one by one, until only darkness remained. He stepped out of the vehicle and looked around. The valley was completely empty. No road signs, no houses, no machines. Just rough land, tall rocks, and cold wind. The silence was so deep that even his own breathing sounded too loud. Great. Just great. He checked the engine. Several wires were dead. The battery had completely failed, and the reserve power cell was cracked. There was no way to fix it without tools he didn't have. The sun finally disappeared, leaving the land in dull blue shadows. Strange noises started echoing from somewhere far away, low growls that didn't sound like wind. Evan couldn't see anything moving, but he felt the presence of something out there, something alive, something dangerous. He grabbed his flashlight and scanned the area. The beam of light cut through the air, shaking a little in his hand. The rocks looked sharper at night. The grass swayed unnaturally. A chill settled on his skin. "This is bad," he whispered. He grabbed his small camping lamp and lit it. A soft, warm glow surrounded him, but it wasn't enough to push away the darkness. Night on alien worlds was always unpredictable. Some creatures hunted by sound, some hunted by smell, and some liked to stalk their prey for hours before attacking. Evan kept listening to the strange sounds in the distance. The growling got a little louder, then stopped. Total silence returned. And that was even worse. He stood absolutely still. No wind, no birds, no insects, nothing. It was as if the entire wilderness was waiting for something. Then he heard it soft. Footsteps, slow, careful, light. They were coming toward him. He lifted his flashlight quickly and pointed it at the direction of the sound. His heart beat fast. He expected a predator, something with many eyes and sharp jaws. But instead, he saw a small shape standing at the edge of the light. A girl, not a human girl. Her body was slim and covered in short fur that shimmered softly in the dim light. Two tall ears stood on her head, twitching as she listened to the wind. Her tail was low and still. Her eyes glowed gentle gold, watching him carefully, almost fearfully. She looked tired, hungry, and alone. Evan froze. She froze too. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wilderness around them stayed quiet, as if the whole land was holding its breath again. Finally, the canine alien girl took one slow step forward, not attacking, not running, just watching him with cautious eyes. Evan whispered, "Who? Who are you?" But she didn't speak. She simply looked at his dead engine, then looked at him, and then looked back at the dark wilderness behind hers. If she knew danger was coming, as if she had been running from it, and now? It was here. The girl stood at the edge of the light like a quiet shadow, her golden eyes fixed on Evan as if she was studying every movement he made. Her fur was short but thick, the color of cold sand, and patches near her shoulder looked scratched, maybe even wounded. Evan slowly lowered his flashlight so he wouldn't scare her. She didn't step back, but her ears twitched nervously at every small sound around them. Evan swallowed and spoke gently. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." His voice sounded too loud in the silent wilderness, but he kept it low and calm. He knew enough about alien species to understand that sudden movements could trigger fear, or worse, aggression. So he stayed still, hands open, showing he held no weapon. The girl tilted her head slightly, observing him like a creature that understood fear more than trust. Her breathing was soft and shaky. She looked young, maybe 16 or 17 in human years, but her alien features made it hard to be sure. Her tail moved once, a small, worried flick. The temperature dropped fast, and cold mist began to creep over the ground, rising around her legs. The wilderness always grew more dangerous in the dark, and the mist meant predators were nearby. Evan felt unease in his chest. The girl felt it too, her ears shot upright, listening sharply as if she heard something he couldn't. A low rumble echoed from the distance. She stepped closer to him in fear, not attacking, not threatening, seeking safety. Evan realized then she wasn't following him. She was running from something else. He gently pointed to his broken vehicle. "My engine died. I can't leave." He wasn't sure if she understood his words. But she looked at the dead transport with sad, resigned eyes, as if she already knew no human machine could save them from what was coming. The growl echoed again, closer this time. She flinched and pressed her ears flat against her head. Evan turned his flashlight toward the sound, but the mist made the beam weak and blurry. He could barely see more than a few steps ahead. The girl suddenly moved to stand in front of him, placing herself between him and the direction of the noise. Her tail rose slightly. Her body tensed. Something inside her changed. She was scared, but she was ready to protect. Evan whispered, "You don't have to do that." But she didn't move. She kept staring into the fog, her muscles shaking but strong. Another growl came, louder this one from a second direction. Evan's heart raced. To predators. Maybe more. He grabbed his small metal rod from his emergency kit. It was not a real weapon, but better than nothing. When he stepped up beside her, she glanced at him, surprised. For a moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them. Silent understanding that survival would only happen if they worked together. She took a careful step toward his broken cart. She sniffed the ropes tied to it, then looked at him again. She touched the rope lightly with her clawed fingers. Then with her shoulders, Evan blinked. "Are you trying to help?" he said softly. She only stared. Then, without warning, she grabbed the rope and pulled it a little with her shoulder. The cart moved an inch. She let out a small sound, a tired whine. But her eyes shone with determination. Before Evan could react, a sharp screech broke through the mist. One of the predators had come close enough to smell them. The girl jumped back, her fur standing straight, her ears raised high. She looked at Evan again. But this time her eyes were pleading. "Follow me." That was the message. She tugged the rope a second time and started walking toward the darker side of the valley, away from the predator sounds. She walked on two legs, but slowly, awkwardly, as if she was too weak to run. Evan grabbed the handle of the cart and pushed as she pulled. Trying to keep up, the mist grew thicker. The wind hit harder. The predators growled again. But farther away now, the girl led him to a hidden gap between two large rock-sand old cave entrances. Narrow but deep enough to hide them. She dropped the rope and stepped inside, looking back at him with urgency. Evan pushed the cart in and squeezed through. The moment he entered, she stepped to the entrance and sniffed the air again. Only then did she relax. A little inside the cave, the air was warmer. Evan set the lamp down, and the soft light filled the space. The girl stood at the far wall, her back against the stone. Breathing hard, for the first time, Evan noticed the deep scratch across her shoulder. It wasn't old. Something had attacked her not long ago. Something strong. He slowly approached. She tensed, but didn't run. "Thank you," he said softly. "You saved me." Her ears lifted slightly. Not fully, but a little. For the first time since arriving, she didn't look scared. She looked hopeful. The cave was narrow, but it felt like the safest place in the entire wilderness. The soft lamp made a warm circle of light on the dusty floor. But everything beyond that circle turned into dark shadows that seemed to move on their own. Evan sat beside his broken cart, catching his breath. The canine alien girl, still silent, stood near the cave entrance with her ears raised high, listening to every sound outside. Her shoulder wound glowed faintly under the lamp. She was in pain, but she didn't show fear not anymore. She kept watching the opening, her body ready to react. Evan could see it clearly. She was young, tired, and alone. Yet she was fighting with everything she had. Evan whispered, "What was chasing you out there?" Of course, she didn't answer with words. Instead, she turned her head slightly, as if she understood his question, and then looked back into the darkness. A long, low growl echoed outside. This time, it was close. Too close. The girl stepped forward and sniffed the cold air. Her tail stiffened. Her claws pushed into the ground. Evan felt a wave of fear rise inside him. Whatever was out there, it wasn't alone. He dimmed the lamp a little. Darkness grew around them, but it gave them cover. The girl turned to him and nodded slightly, as if approving his idea. She was smart. Smarter than he expected. Seconds later, a heavy thud hit the ground outside the cave. Then another and another. The creatures were gathering. Evan's heart raced. He gripped his metal rod tighter. He didn't know if it would help, but he refused to sit and do nothing. The girl crouched low, her ears flat, her teeth visible. The sound she made was not a growl. It was something deeper, something meant to warn even the bravest. Predators to stay back. But the creatures didn't care. A long shadow passed across the cave wall. Evan froze. The creature's form was huge long legs, a thick body, and a low head with horns that curved backward. It sniffed the entrance, making rough, snorting sounds as it searched for scent. Evan held his breath. The girl remained perfectly still. The creature pushed its head closer, trying to enter, but the cave was too narrow for its massive shoulders. It snarled in frustration and slammed its claws against the rock. Shaking dust from the ceiling, Evan almost jumped, but the girl was calm. She took a slow step forward, then made a strange barking sound, sharp, strong, commanding. The creature jerked back in surprise. It growled again. Deeper this time, then something else growled behind it. Another creature, a third, answered from the left side. They were surrounding the cave entrance like a hunting pack. Evan whispered, "There are more of them." His voice trembled before he could stop it. The girl looked back at him. For a moment, their eyes met again, and he saw something he didn't expect: confidence. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting him too. She stepped in front of him, lowering her center of gravity, preparing to lunge if the creatures tried to break through. Her tail rose in a defensive curl. A sudden screech burst through the air, loud enough to hurt Evan's ears. The creatures began slashing at the cave entrance, angry and hungry. Sparks flew as their claws scraped stone. The girl let out another fierce sound, deeper and stronger than before. She was fighting them with her courage alone. Evan couldn't just stand behind her. He moved next to her, lifting his metal rod. When she saw him beside her, something in her eyes softened. She was no longer alone in this cave. He whispered, "We fight together." The creatures pushed again. Their bodies hit the rocks so hard the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lamp flickered once. Then something changed. Outside, the growling stopped. The shadows moved away, and a long silence returned. The girl's ears twitched. She sniffed. She waited. Evan stayed completely still. Then, crack. Something slammed against the side of the cave with unbelievable force. The wall cracked, and a piece of rock fell to the ground. Evan stumbled back. The girl leaped forward, slashing at the creature with her claws through the opening. A sharp yelp came from outside. She had hit it, but the pack didn't run. They grew angrier. The ground vibrated again as the largest creature rammed the cave wall a second time. The opening widened. A claw forced its way inside, swiping blindly through the air. The girl grabbed Evan's hand and pulled him deeper into the cave. She growled at him, not in anger, but warning him to move now. For the first time, Evan realized something terrifying. This cave wouldn't protect them for long. The creatures wanted them, and they were not going to leave. Asterisk. The cave walls trembled again as the giant creature rammed its weight against the stone. Dust fell like dry rain, and cracks spread slowly across the corner of the entrance. Evan felt his heart pounding in his chest. The cave was supposed to protect them, but now it felt like a fragile shell waiting to break. The canine alien girl tightened her grip on his hand before letting go. She stepped toward the cracking wall, her ears low, her tail stiff, and her breathing sharp. She was scared anyone could see that, but she was not ready to give up. "Not yet," Evan whispered. "We can't stay here. They'll break through." His voice echoed weakly against the stone. His cart sat behind him, heavy and full of supplies. He knew they needed to run, but without a working engine, they had nothing but their feet, and he had no idea how far the next safe place was. The girl turned her head and looked at the cart. She studied it slowly, with a look that made Evan pause. Then she stepped closer to it. She touched the rope again with her clawed fingers. She ran her hand along its length until it reached the hook, and then she looked at Evan with eyes that said something very clearly. "Follow me. Trust me." Before he could ask anything, another loud crash shook the cave. A large piece of stone fell from the roof and smashed into the floor beside them. The girl jumped back, then looked toward the deeper tunnel behind them. It wasn't safe either, too narrow, too unstable. If they ran inside, they might get trapped forever. The only option was to leave the cave. But how? Evan stared at the rope. "You want to pull the cart," he whispered, almost in disbelief. No, that's too heavy. You're hurt. You can't." He didn't even finish. She stepped back, her legs bent. Her hands touched the ground. Her spine curved downward, and she dropped to all fours. It was silent for a moment. Even the creatures outside stopped growling, as if sensing a shift inside the cave. The girl stood there, steady and strong, her body shaped for movement, her muscles focused, her breath slow but fierce. Her eyes glowed brighter, filled with instinct and determination. She gripped the rope between her teeth, pulled it until the knot tightened, then looked at Evan again. This was her natural form. Her strongest form, Evan, stood frozen. He didn't know what felt more shocking, the sight of her raw strength or the fact that she was offering it to save him. Outside, the creatures growled again, louder this time. The cave entrance cracked even more. One more hit and the predators would break through. The girl pulled the rope once. The cart moved an inch. She let out a small, pained whine, but did not stop. She lowered her shoulders, planted her claws into the ground, and pulled again, this time harder. The heavy cart shifted another inch. Then another. Evan rushed to help, grabbing the back and pushing with all his strength. Okay, I'm with you. Let's go. Together, they moved the cart toward the cave entrance. The girl's muscles trembled under the weight, but she refused to slow down. The first creature forced its head through the widening crack, snarling. Its long teeth scraped the stone. Its eyes locked onto them. Faster. Evan shouted. The girl responded with a deep growl and pulled harder. She sprinted out of the cave entrance just as the creature burst inside, smashing the remaining wall apart. Evan pushed the cart into the open wilderness and stumbled out behind her, barely missing the creature's claws as it swiped through the air. The cold mist hit them instantly. The wind roared. The wilderness in front of them was dark, wide, and filled with danger. But she did not stop running. Her paws dug into the dirt. Her back legs kicked strong against the ground. She pulled the heavy cart as if her life depended on it, and it did. Evan pushed from behind whenever the wheels hit rocks or dips. He could hardly keep up with her speed. The creatures chased them, their growls echoing across the valley. One lunged forward, almost close enough to bite her tail. Evan shouted and threw a rock at it. The creature fell back for a moment, giving her a few precious seconds. Their breaths mixed with the cold night air, their hearts beat as one. The girl's feet slammed the ground faster. She ran with everything she had, her body moving like a powerful four-legged machine built for endurance. Evan looked at her with amazement. She wasn't just strong, she was heroic, and she was risking her life for him. The mist began to thin. The land opened ahead. The creature slowed, confused by the open terrain. For the first time since the engine died, they were escaping. The wind cut against Evan's face like sharp knives as he ran beside the cart, pushing with all the strength he had left. The canine alien girl pulled ahead of him, her paws beating against the cold soil, her breath fast but controlled. Even in the darkness, he could see the muscles on her back tightening with every pull. She was fighting the wilderness with nothing but her body. Behind them, the creature's growls slowly faded. Their heavy footfalls became distant echoes, swallowed by the thick fog. The girl didn't slow down, not even for a second. Fear was still chasing them, even if the predators were far behind now. After several minutes of non-stop running, the icy mist began clearing. Moonlight broke through the clouds, revealing the shape of a wide valley ahead. Jagged rocks lined the edges like broken teeth. A freezing wind swept through the open space and rattled the ground beneath them. The girl stopped suddenly. Her chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. Sweat dripped from her fur. Her legs trembled from exhaustion. Evan stepped beside her and rested his hand gently on her back. She flinched at first, then relaxed slightly at his touch. "You did amazing," he whispered, "but we need a place to rest." The wind grew colder, colder than before. Evan looked at the horizon and saw something terrible. The sky was turning white. Thin clouds thickened into sheets, swirling fast above the valley floor. A storm was coming, a brutal one. He looked down at the girl. She was staring at the sky too, ears straight, tail still. She understood. Her instincts warned her even faster than the weather sensors on his broken vehicle. Evan scanned the land for shelter. But all he saw were rocks, sharp cliffs, and dead bushes. No caves, no overhangs, nothing. "We can't stay here," he said softly. "We'll freeze." The girl padded forward and sniffed the air, then looked at the ground. Oh. She crouched low and pressed her paw to the dirt, testing the vibration, feeling the direction of the wind. After a moment, she glanced left, toward a narrow path hidden between tall stone walls. She wanted to go that way. Evan nodded. "Lead the way." She gripped the rope again and pulled, though her legs shook with every step. Evan pushed from behind. The cartwheels hit stones and cracks, each impact sending sharp pain through his arms. But he pushed harder. They were a team now, and he refused to let her carry the weight alone. The temperature dropped even more. Snowflakes began falling soft at first, then sharp and fast. The wind howled across the valley like an angry spirit. Evan shouted over the wind, "We need to hurry." The girl lowered herself and ran again, despite the cold biting into her paws. Her breath fogged in front of her. The snow stuck to her fur. Evan saw her stumble once, then push herself up instantly, refusing to stop. She was stronger than any human he had ever met, but she was also breaking by the time they reached the narrow path between the stone walls. The storm had fully arrived. Snow burst sideways, clinging to the cart, to Evan's arms, to her ears and tail. The wind echoed between the rock walls like a loud whistle. The girl collapsed to her knees. "Hey!" Evan rushed to her side. She was panting uncontrollably. Her chest heaved. Her paws were red from the cold. Without hesitation, he slid under her shoulder and lifted her up. "You're done pulling," he whispered. "I'll push for both of us." She shook her head weakly, as if telling him she could still help. But her legs said otherwise. They trembled as though barely holding her weight. "No," Evan said firmly. "You saved me. Let me save you." For the first time since meeting him, she didn't resist. She lowered her head against his arm and let him guide her. Evan gripped the rope she had held between her teeth and pulled. The cart barely moved. He tightened his jaw and pulled again with everything he had. Slowly, painfully, the cart rolled forward. The path narrowed. Huge rocks towered on both sides, blocking some of the wind, but not the cold. Evan kept walking, dragging the cart one step at a time while the girl walked beside him, limping, staying close for warmth. Minutes passed like hours. His arms burned, his breath cracked, his legs shook. But every time he looked at the girl exhausted, hurt, yet still trying to stay on her feet, he found strength he didn't know he had. At last, the narrow path opened into a small hollow in the rock, a half-collapsed stone shelter hidden from the wind. Evan almost fell to his knees in relief. "We made it," he whispered. The girl looked at him, tired but relieved, and gently touched her forehead to his arm. In that cold, brutal wilderness, surrounded by danger and death, a bond had formed, one stronger than fear, stronger than the storm, a bond that would soon change both of their lives forever. The stone shelter was small and cracked, but to Evan and the canine alien girl, it felt like a miracle. The storm screamed outside, throwing snow and ice against the walls, but inside, the cold was bearable. Not warm, just bearable, enough to breathe, enough to survive the night. Evan lowered the girl gently onto a dry patch of ground, her limbs shaking from exhaustion. She curled into herself, tail wrapping around her legs as if trying to protect her body from the cold. Her fur was wet with melting snow, and she shivered with each breath. Evan knelt beside her. "Hey, stay with me," he whispered. Her ears twitched, but she didn't lift her head. He took off his outer jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She let out a soft, surprised sound like a tiny whimper, then slowly leaned into the warmth. Evan touched her arm carefully to check her injury, the scratch wound from earlier. had reopened during the run, and fresh blood stained her fur. "You've been hurting this whole time," he whispered, guilt building inside him. He reached for his emergency kit, thankful he had grabbed it before fleeing the cave. The girl watched him with tired, half-open eyes, unsure what he was doing. Evan held up the small medical pack and spoke softly. "It's okay, I'm helping." She didn't move away. That alone told him everything. She trusted him now. Evan cleaned the wound gently. She winced once, but she didn't pull back. He applied a patch that stopped the bleeding, then wrapped it with a soft bandage. When he finished, the girl lowered her head in gratitude and touched his hand lightly with her nose. A small, warm gesture. A simple thank you. But it meant everything. He sat beside her, letting their shoulders touch for warmth. The storm howled outside like a beast that refused to rest. Snow piled against the shelter entrance. The world felt far away, swallowed by cold and silence. For a long time, neither of them spoke. He couldn't, and she didn't know how. But they communicated in small ways. When the wind grew too loud, her ears pressed flat, and Evan placed a hand on her back to reassure her. When he shivered, she shifted closer, sharing what little warmth her body still held. Two strangers from two worlds, surviving together in a broken shelter, yet feeling less alone than they had in years. After some time, the girl slowly sat up. She looked at Evan with soft golden eyes. Her chest still rose painfully, but her expression had changed. She no longer looked like a lone creature fighting the wilderness. She looked safe. Safe beside him, Evan spoke gently. "Do you have a name?" She blinked. Her ears twitched. Then she pressed her hand to her chest and made a quiet sound. Rhea. Evan smiled. "Rhea, is that your name?" She nodded once, her eyes bright for a moment. Evan placed a hand on his own chest. "Evan." She repeated it slowly, her voice weak but clear. "Evan." She had a voice, just unused, hesitant like someone who had spent too long hiding instead of talking. Now that she trusted him, she dared to try. Evan felt warmth inside him that had nothing to do with the jacket or the shelter. It felt like the start of a fragile but powerful connection. He asked softly, "Why were you alone out there? What happened to your people?" Rhea looked down. Her ears lowered. Her hands tightened on her knees. A long silence followed. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her trembling shoulders, the scars on her arms, the way she had flinched at loud sounds, all told the story. She had once belonged to a pack. She had once had a family, and she had lost them. Maybe to the predators, maybe to the storm. Maybe to something darker. Evan didn't push her for details. He simply placed his hand gently on hers. She looked up, surprised at first, then let out a quiet breath as she relaxed again. "You're not alone now," he said softly. Her eyes glowed in the dim light, warm and vulnerable. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder, a silent acceptance of his promise. Outside, the storm began to weaken. The wind softened, snow fell slower, but inside the shelter, something far stronger than fear grew between them. A bond built not by words, but by survival. A bond that would only grow stronger with dawn. The storm finally calmed at dawn, leaving a white, frozen world outside the shelter. The sky glowed soft blue, and a pink sunrise touched the edges of the valley. Evan opened his tired eyes and found Rhea sleeping next to him, her head resting gently against his arm, her breathing slow and peaceful. For the first time since he met her, she looked at peace, not afraid, not running, just resting like she belonged there. He smiled and whispered, "Morning." Her ears lifted slightly. She opened her eyes and blinked at the light, then sat up slowly, stretching her tired limbs. Her wound was still painful, but the patch had worked. She looked stronger than last night, still weak, but hopeful. Evan stood and pushed some snow away from the shelter's entrance. He froze when he saw something unexpected in the distance. A thin vertical beam of light flashed for a moment before vanishing. A distress beacon. Someone, somewhere, had received his emergency signal from earlier. He turned toward Rhea. Help might be close. She tilted her head, unsure what he meant, but she sensed his excitement. Her tail twitched slightly. They stepped outside together. The snow crunched under their feet. The valley felt different, now less threatening, more alive. The wind carried a faint humming sound. Evan's heart jumped. That wasn't wind. It was engines, real engines. He climbed onto a large rock and looked toward the horizon. His breath caught in his throat. A small rescue ship broke through the clouds, descending slowly, scanning the ground. Evan waved his arms wildly. Here, we're here. The ship turned toward him. Rhea stepped close to his side, eyes wide, both hopeful and nervous. The rescue craft landed with a soft thud, blowing snow in all directions. The side door opened, and 3 armored officers stepped out to humans and 1 reptilian alien. Their scanners beeped as they examined the area. One of them spotted Evan and rushed forward. Sir, are you injured? We received a weak distress signal from your transport. I'm fine, Evan said, breathing hard. She saved me. He pointed at Rhea. Immediately, the officers stiffened. They raised their weapons reflexively. Sir, step away from the creature. She's not a creature. Evan snapped, stepping directly between Rhea and the officers. She saved my life. More than once. Rhea took a frightened step back, ears flattening as she sensed danger. The lead officer frowned. Sir, that species is classified as wild and dangerous. We can't. Evan cut him off. Dangerous. She risked her life for me. She pulled my cart across the valley. She protected me from predators. If she hadn't dropped to all fours and dragged us out of danger, I'd be dead. The officers exchanged confused looks. Aliens saving humans was not common, especially not ones from species labeled as feral. The reptilian officer approached cautiously. He scanned Rhea with a handheld device. His eyes widened. She's young, he said slowly. Very young. And dehydrated. Malnourished. Injured too. She should not have survived the storm alone. Evan stepped closer to her. She didn't just survive. She fought for both of us. Rhea looked up at him with tired, grateful eyes. She didn't understand their words, but she felt every emotion. The reptilian officer lowered his scanner. Protocol says we take her to the wild species containment zone. Evan shook his head immediately. No, she's not going anywhere without me. The officers hesitated. The lead officer tapped his communicator. After a short conversation with Command, he finally nodded. Command says, the human escort may remain with her until her case is reviewed. Rhea didn't know what the words meant. But when Evan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, she relaxed. The officers helped them into the rescue ship. Rhea sat close to Evan, shivering slightly from the cold. As the ship lifted off, the valley shrank beneath them, turning into a white scar between the mountains. One of the officers finally spoke again. We will record everything. A wild canine alien girl saving a human. The galaxy will want to know this story. Evan smiled and looked at Rhea. They should. She's a hero. Rhea's ears lifted in shy surprise. She leaned against him gently, her tail curling around her legs. The officer continued. This will change how many species see humans, and how they see her kind. Evan rubbed her shoulder. Good. They should see the truth. Rhea closed her eyes and rested her head against him, trusting him completely. From a dead engine in the wilderness, to a bond forged in snow and fear, to a rescue that would echo across worlds. Their story was only beginning. and the galaxy was about to learn what loyalty, courage and trust between two very different beings could truly become.